Okay, welcome to section number 3 in the Trading with Market and Volume Profile course. We're going to talk briefly in this chapter about advantages of using market profile. And again, I feel like market profile is not just a standalone thing to use on its own, but it's a great macro analysis tool just to get a better understanding of how the markets are moving and of areas of interest. So let's go through a few advantages here that we have with market profile and discuss each one in detail. First, we organize data in an easy to understand visual display. Okay, so if I bring up, for example, here a Sierra chart, we can see how it is very easy just by glancing at market profile. We can see how values have been forming. For example, if we go here, you can see we had a balanced area, then we see an imbalance where we make up this high, and then we can see values shifting down, and now we're pretty much again back into a previous area of balance. So with market profile, if you zoom out, you can very easily see areas where the market has traded or areas where we're most likely to be going to trade next. It helps form an idea of the daily context and the market environment, as I just showed. You can see if we're on a trending or what's called an imbalanced or in a consolidating or balanced environment. Gives a good global view of how values migrate. So again, how price seeks those areas of balance, similar in a volume profile to how values tend to go and look for points of control and for high volume node areas, as we're going to go much more in detail later on in the course. It makes identifying market structure easier, again, when we see if we're trending or consolidating. Takes away the bias from candlestick patterns and colors. Okay, so if I bring up here like trading view, this chart, I actually have it on purpose in a neutral tone of just white and gray. Normally, I use charts with green and red candlesticks, but a lot of times when people see green and red, then they identify that with, green money. It might cause them to make impulsive, irrational decisions to try to chase the market, or if they see red, they get scared and they might just get out of positions that otherwise would have been worked out, etc. So with the market profile, like if I go here on the Euro US dollar chart, this is the session profiles. You can see how the market profile give us a pretty neutral view of the market. You see this and there's not as much bias as if you were looking at colored candlesticks. All this is showing us is how the distribution of price and time went on in the sessions. Okay, so for example here you can see this profile. If we look at this on a candlestick, this was a very neutral daily candle. If we go on this daily chart, you can see that that chart that we're looking at was this one right over here, this very neutral doji candle that we had right here. That was the same view that we had from the market profile. But if we're looking at it at the market profile, we can see that we had very good excesses on the sides, and we can see that we had just a more of a value or time cluster right in the middle. As you can see, this has been pretty much the area of values and consolidations throughout the various days. Reinforces volume profile principles when used in conjunction. So this pretty much, we're going to talk about this a lot. But just like with volume profiles, with the market profile, we're also forming what would be considered nodes, as you can see on the candles, on the profiles. And you can see how we're going to get very nice price reactions along this node areas, as we're going to look later on when we go much more into the strategies, etc. So for example here, you can see market, this is the gold chart. Market push down, this is gold futures, and then we have this profile, we have this point of control, and for example you can see we got a very precise pullback into that area here, into the point of control of that chart. For example, if we go back, you can see same things here. We had this node here, market opened up here. Let me actually split this. And you can see how the market came up. First we filled in this singles, and then right here into the edge of this high volume node we pushed in and rejected, and we went further down for the close of the day. So this could have given us a nice intraday opportunity on that day, for example. Then works on any market. One of the big advantages, if we go and we look at a market, you know, let's say in futures, and we go into a footprint chart, for example, then you're going to see that when we do things like delta footprint charts, we need very precise volume data in all those markets. That's why it works so well, for example, on the CME futures, which is a centralized market. And that's what I like to use as my markets of choice when I'm day trading, because I want to have the most accurate volume information possible. It is possible, for example, with crypto, if you're using one of the largest exchanges, you can do order flow trading. But when it comes to market profile, since we're taking into account time versus price, well, any market here on the charts, this is going to work out very well. As you can see here on the template that I'm going to share with all of you, I have several charts. There's a Bitcoin market profile, there's a gold, there's a Euro US dollar, there's the NQ, and there's the ES, okay? But all these charts, again, they're very customizable. You can use this as a base and just change the symbol and look at any other market that you are interested in. But that's the great advantage with market profile, is that it works in any market, okay? And if we go through some of the slides here that I have some examples, advantages, for example, we talked about how it lets us see market conditions easier. So if we take this chart here, we have a daily chart, and I put numbers on each daily candle would correspond with the specific market profile for that session. And you can see how, if you're looking at a candlestick chart, all the information you're getting is the open, close, high, and low. When you're looking at a market profile, you get the open, close, high, low, open, close, but then as well, you can see the time distribution. This is going to tell us a lot about what the intent of the market participants is. Because if we have a candle and we have a lot of values being built around a certain area, well, that gives us more of an understanding of where fair values are considered to be. For example, here, if we look at candle number 10, this breakout candle right here, you can see that the market opened here. We had a flush down pretty much into the lower edges of this profiles here, into the singles over here. We rejected strongly, and then we ended up closing on top, and you can see how we build a lot of value here, pretty much right around the opening price, but then we closed right on top here of the highs that we had from these previous days as well. But with market profile, you can see very easily how we're building values. You can see how we rejected very strongly with this excess tail on the bottom. You can also see obviously the wick on the candlestick, but you cannot see how we were building a lot of time value towards the top of this candlestick. And if we would look at a volume profile as well, then we can see how we've been building volumes as well. And then you can see on the next one, we opened right on top. We came down, pretty much just a retest on the bottom. And then you can see that we ended up building values down here, but then ended up closing right in the top area here on number 11. And now we went from a balanced environment into an imbalanced trending environment here. Next, the advantages where we're looking about the value migration. So if you just zoom out, you can see how we build values, and then we have impulsive moves, and then the market usually will come back seeking these areas of value. And then when we have an imbalance like we had here, this is in a Bitcoin chart, we had an impulsive move up and then a swift rejection down. And so we know that in general, this is a big value area that we are looking for. Below that will be the next value area here. So you can see how we're looking for areas of price acceptance. And then what we talked about, using the same confluence of principles also as volume profile. Here you can see we had a pretty balanced day with the lows here. Then we had a day where we opened and we built two values here with a low volume or a low time acceptance area here. We closed, and then the next day we come up and we perfectly retest this bottom edges of this nodes right here. And then we just went off and had a very bearish reaction and ended up closing and forming values down at the bottom here. So you can see how all these areas, the low volume nodes, the singles, etc., these are all confluence areas, and we're going to go later on into strategies on how we can use these levels to identify trading opportunities using market profile. Okay, so that's it for this lesson. We're going to keep reinforcing all these advantages as the course goes on and we start focusing on different concepts, etc. But this was just an overview of how market profile gives us a new way to organize data on our charts and to help us form better strategies.